Ed, I just want to say thanks for joining us. And I just wanted to share your story. And a part of the story kind of begins with your dad, who was a businessman who did leave a tremendous legacy of generosity for you.
Yeah, Dad passed away last year. And as I think about his life, he was really struggling after World War II. In the first 9 years of his marriage, he had 6 kids, and I think he had 6 different jobs.
Wow.
In that 9-year period. And in the middle of all that, somehow he felt led to start his own business. And most of the people in the community that knew him thought he was a little bit crazy. And he might have felt he was kind of sticking his neck out a bit too. And in his prayer time through all that, he promised God, if God would bless his efforts, that he would give 50% of his income away for the rest of his life.
Wow. Now, that generosity, that commitment that he made to God there, how did that play out in your house kind of as a kid growing up?
It framed everything. I mean, our house was a place that everybody came to, it seemed. We always had people for dinner, and it was typically people who were hurting. And it framed how Dad thought. He would often say to us, be kind to everybody, because they're fighting a hard battle. And that provoked things like having his business card out along the interstate at the hotels and restaurants and gas stations. So when people on the interstate would show up without money and would be stranded, they would call our house. And as a child, I saw Dad going out and taking care of those people. And then as we got to be teenagers, when he wasn't around, we would get the calls. And so we learned to go out and take care of those people. I also remember, clear back in the 60s, rounding up people and doing mission trips to children's homes in Kentucky before that whole phrase mission trips was, popular. I think before maybe it was even used. So that was just a common vibe in our home and in what we grew up with.
And his generosity not only impacted you as a young person growing up, but then also your decision about career and even education. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, the mission at home was really compelling, and I was blessed to graduate with a really good GPA at Purdue, and I planned to come back to the family business. And when one of my key professors heard that, he looked at me and says, "Don't you understand? I can get you into any master's program in the United States. I could get you into Harvard. I can get you into Stanford."
Wow.
And he just looked at me and shook his head, and it didn't even really resonate because I wanted to be part of that mission and part of that spirit that I felt my whole life.
Well, recently too, and this is something we've talked about quite a bit, you've had to kind of think about your own legacy as you had this battle with cancer. I would love for you to share that story with us.
Yeah, it kind of begins, I think, a bit with Dad's funeral wake last year. It lasted 10 or 11 hours, and there was over 1,000 people that came through. But the person I remember the most was a total stranger who was a McDonald's counter worker. And we asked her who she was and why she was there, and she says, well, when your dad would come out to McDonald's, he would always take an interest in us. And he was always pushing the darkness away.
That's a great phrase.
And yeah, I'll never forget it. In fact, it's something I want to teach my kids as well. So when I got this pancreatic cancer diagnosis, which kills 98% of the people who are diagnosed with it, I mean, it was really a defining moment on how to respond. And it was a dark, cold November night, and we walked back out to the car, and I looked at my wife and said, "So what do we do now?" And we decided we better go tell the kids. We had 4 kids that lived in Indianapolis at the time. And so we went to the first daughter's house and told her, and of course, a pancreatic cancer diagnosis is really a death sentence. So to them, it was their dad was probably not going to be here in 6 months. And so we said, well, we're going to the next daughter. She says, well, I'm going to follow you. And pretty soon we had this caravan traveling around Indianapolis to our 4 kids who lived there. And then we said, well, we need to drive home and tell the kids there that aren't married. And we have 7 kids, so there's a lot of them. And so I had an hour with 4 kids behind me. I had an hour to think about what I was going to say when I got home, because I knew that I would be remembered forever. So on the way home, it was really interesting how God just laid on my heart that, Ed, this is your last lesson. to your kids. And you need to find the grace to die well, because it's not about you. And so that journey really started when I got home that night. And we gathered in the family room, and together we decided that this wasn't going to be about us as a family. And we would be positive, we would be thankful, and we wouldn't complain, and we would be courageous with whatever came and however long the struggle would be. And so the outcome has been pretty remarkable, really. 6 days later, I had surgery, and I lost 30% of my pancreas. But I'm cancer-free today. I didn't have to go through chemo. I have no symptoms. There's a low probability it'll ever return, and the doctors say my outcome violates everything they know and teach about pancreatic cancer. So I wonder why I got a get out of jail free card, or why God blessed us so richly. You know, all of us wonder how we'll behave or how we'll respond to that kind of a challenge in our life, and we hope we can respond well. And as I look back, I was able to respond how I would have hoped I could. And I attribute that to, of course, God's grace first, but a lot of it has to do with the lesson that Dad left us, the legacy he left us about it's not about you, it's about pushing the darkness away in other people's life, even when you're confronted by something like pancreatic cancer. And so the power of that legacy and the power of that example was remarkable even through that kind of an event. And it just reminds me of that proverb where it says the blessings of a father will be passed to the third and fourth generation.
Thanks. And I think you've kind of helped pass that on to a bunch of us. And so when I heard about the legacy your dad left you, and then of course now the legacy you're leaving your kids, I just wanted you to be able to share it with our people. So thanks very much.
It was a privilege.